Very seldomly do I ever see a story this contentious, and that's because we covered this over a year ago, but new details have arisen from this situation that I think would be debatable and something to forward that discussion, and that is Lieutenant Ridge Alcanis. Now, as some of you guys may have remembered from that story over a year ago, this was a very close-cut case. However, that has now changed because he's now back in the U.S. Let's go back in time. Let's rehash some of the details so you guys kind of know what's going on. Ridge Alcanis and his family were stationed over in Japan, close to the base of Mount Fuji, and had decided for a family vacation to go up there for the day. As they went up there, obviously there are several altering effects that can take place in the body, physiologically speaking, and they came down from their hike later in the day and they decided to drive home as of that night. Now, during that drive, Ridge had fallen asleep during his time behind the wheel. The family had tried to wake him up several times, and he had still decided to still go behind the wheel, and essentially this had happened multiple times according to various reports that are out there. Now, during this incident of falling asleep, he actually ran over two people, Japanese locals, with his car, which included a mom and a son-in-law during this incident. Now, in the Japanese eyes, there are a lot of ways that you can handle this that are not very traditional with the military way or the Western way of dealing with it, but they did pay $1.6 million towards his family to try and make amends. On top of that, they still had to go to court, which, if you've never lived in Japan, I was there for 4 years, so I can speak about this, and they warn you of this, is that you're pretty much going to be found guilty because I believe the conviction rate is like 98 or 99%. And if you do go to Japanese prison, you are almost guaranteed two things. Fish heads, where you're going to eat that for almost every meal with rice, which, if you've ever had fish heads, are not very desirable. On top of that, they are very well known for their manual labor camps that people get put into if they are in these prisons. So Ridge, during this entire time, was not going to have a good experience no matter what. But that was what they came up with, and some people thought 3 years was even too little. And during this time, the family even reached out to me and other people that were covering this, trying to advocate as much as possible. This included also, on top of that, politicians. They do have some words that they wanted to share as he's been moved to California. They say after 507 days, Lieutenant Ridge Alcanis is on his way home to the United States. We are encouraged by Ridge's transfer back to the U.S., but cannot celebrate until Ridge has been reunited with his family. His family said it in a statement to the Associated Press. They also say when the Biden administration is presented with a complete set of facts and circumstances surrounding the case, we're confident they will promptly recognize the absurdity of Ridge's conviction, the family said. We trust that the Department of Justice will urgently wish to end this travesty of justice by immediately releasing Ridge, and we look forward to Ridge enjoying the holidays at home with his wife and children. Ridge's father says, the word that comes to our mind is fairness. We want him to be treated fairly for an incident, Alcanis' father, Derek Alcanis, said in an interview last year with the AP, and says, we don't feel like it's been that way. We know it hasn't been that way, and it concerns us that our son has been given a 3-year prison sentence for an accident. Now, I do have my own thoughts on this as somebody that's been stationed in Japan, someone that understands that if you look up any laws in regards to this, that essentially you're going to see that 10 years in prison or somewhere around that ballpark is where you're going to see this happen. So 3 years seems like very little, especially losing the life of two people. I believed when I was going to find out through the story that essentially people were going to sit here and say that, yes, we should bring him back to the U.S. and he should serve his punishment here because he's a U.S. citizen, because it can be much more harsh and difficult in Japanese prisons. But I'm actually seeing quite the contrary here across social media. Pale Banana 5865 wrote, F this guy. He should have served the full sentence. He admitted in court that he felt his body go limp around a corner, and he quickly corrected and then chose to continue driving. He admitted negligence that killed two people, then he and his wife tried to weasel his way out of actual accountability. Livingston Perry writes, talk about rank privilege. He also had some senator visit him. If some lowly E4 did this, they would not see freedom for a very long time. So dumb to have rallies and protesters saying, quotations, bring Alcanis home, when the dude pleaded guilty for killing two innocent people. And lastly, Path Comprehensive 198 wrote, what he admitted to police is the literal textbook definition of negligent driving. F this dude, should have let him serve out a sentence in Japan. 3 years is already too light of a sentence when his negligence killed two people. Can't believe he didn't even have to serve 3 years. And so if you want to look up into this, there are documents where politicians did come out to his aid as far as this goes, because there are SOFA agreements, status of forces agreements, where his wife and kids were being in Japan, but he was going to be detained there. So a lot of people are asking, is this going to mean the family stays in Japan? Or are they going to move them back? Or are they still going to give him pay even though he's not technically serving in the military. This brought so many questions that essentially the politicians did some legislation to still allow the family to receive pay for this lieutenant. That way the kids and the family were not totally in distraught array essentially from the situation, because the U.S. policies looking at this thought that they could weigh in and say it wasn't fair, but they still understood that the Japanese had some jurisdiction over this case, but there were other aspects that, Western versus Eastern culture were not going to totally align or agree with. So essentially, this is where I got to ask you guys, what do you guys think about the situation of Lieutenant Ridge Alconiston? Do you think that he should have served the entire time in Japan for those 3 years, or do you think he should come to the States and pretty much get the credit that he got, or continue serving in this California prison as well? It does look like his family will not be able to see him for the next 3 months, but we'll find out more as this unfolds, and I'll keep you guys in the loop. If you guys like what I cover here on the channel, make sure you guys hit me up over on Instagram, Snapchat, Twitter, TikTok, or down in the comments below. I love you guys. I'll see you next time.